Welcome back, episode 6, perhaps, I've lost count. Whole Life Crisis with me, Ollie Rosser, the host, the creator, and still the only voice that you've heard if you listen to this. Still struggling to get guests on. I haven't figured out how to do in-person recording yet. I've spoken to a couple of people that I'm interested in sitting down with about a Zoom session or some other way to record over the internet, and they've said they're keen, so I'm hoping I can maybe pin them down at some point, sit down and actually do something. But as always, in the spirit of doing this regularly and trying to keep it as unedited as possible, while still getting comfortable with just rambling on a microphone in a room by myself, I thought I'd sit down this evening and just do a quick one. I've got a few little things on the agenda, nothing majorly interesting, and nothing I particularly will go into great depth with either. But I suppose let's get started. Coronavirus seems to be not that much of a thing anymore. As I'm walking around town, I've noticed that people are out and about, not wearing masks, not really being socially distant. I'm still doing my best to stay away from members of the public as best I can. The only person I really interact with on on an intimate basis or a very close quarters basis is Sean. So still haven't seen my family all that much. We speak to each other from a distance in the front garden, which is all good. Again, what with Mum having gone through chemotherapy, we're still being very careful about what we do. Don't want to take anything back into the house. So again, living on my own, I'm keeping my distance, and it's fine. I'd rather her be safe. I'd rather my family be safe than put anybody at risk by trying to rush to a hug or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, the people I've seen out and about, I think nobody really cares all that much about it. I could be wrong. I don't know what thoughts are in other people's heads, but just judging from the way that people are acting while they're out in public, doesn't seem like it's on people's minds all that much anymore. It's certainly vanished for the most part from the headlines of the newspapers as far as I can tell. The protests and riots that were happening in America started to take over a little bit, which again I'm very confused at. I would expect to be seeing a spike in cases coming up. Wait and see, I suppose. I hope it doesn't happen. I'd like to see this coronavirus thing done and dusted as quick as possible. We want to start going back to work, not not necessarily for the joy of working. I've thoroughly enjoyed having this time off. I'm not a particularly social creature anyway, so being forced to stay off work and just keep to myself for 9 weeks has been great. I will admit. It would just be nice if there weren't the threat of a global catastrophe. But yeah, we're trying to go back to work soon. Again, more just to get back into the routine of things. I'd be quite happy to stay off until September, but it looks like the schools are going to start opening up sooner than that. It's going to be a bit of a nightmare to manage because we do childcare, so we're having to arrange people's needs around what the government will allow us to do. I won't go into detail, but it looks like it's going to be a tricky process. However, we're as ready as we can be, I suppose. Just need to get myself a decent mask. Talking about coronavirus as well, there was a really interesting podcast last week where Joe Rogan sat down with Eric Weinstein, and they discussed the coronavirus. Again, I won't go into detail with it here, but I suggest you go and listen to that if you like that kind of thing. I love listening to Eric Weinstein because I find him. I was talking to a friend about it earlier today. I find that he doesn't assume that he knows everything, but he's very knowledgeable in his field. I think he's what is he? I'm going to look this up. He's some sort of biologist, like evolutionary theory of biology. Eric Weinstein. Oh no, it's not Eric Weinstein. It was Brett Weinstein. Is an American author, biologist, and evolutionary theorist. So they go into detail about like how this coronavirus might have come about, theories about where it started, how it got into the human population. One interesting thing that he was talking about was that it's very difficult for a virus like this to jump species and then spread. I think he was saying that they're good at either one of those things. So they're either good at spreading in their own little animal populations, excuse me, or they're good at jumping to humans. But when they jump to humans, it's very difficult for them to then spread, which makes this COVID-19 somewhat of an anomaly. And he was going through a couple of theories that perhaps it was man-made in the sense that, you know, they were testing something, and it clearly got out of hand. But a very interesting conversation. I would recommend you listening to that if you are interested in, you know, what's happening with COVID-19, where the pandemic could have come from, and all of that sort of stuff. And they were also talking about the culture war that's happening at the moment and how they could possibly stop it. And Weinstein came up with the idea that instead of having, you know, I'm specifically talking the American system now, that you've got Democrats and Republicans, and it's like a two-party system, and the public have to elect one of these parties into power. Weinstein came up with the idea that you'd have a presidential run which had two patriotic people who were interested in doing the best for the American people and American culture and American society. One coming from a more left-wing perspective, one coming from a more right-wing perspective, but they act as a team as such. That was a very interesting discussion as well, and something that I'm not like a political pundit or anything, but I am keeping an eye on American politics at the minute, and I find it very interesting, and that idea seemed quite interesting to me. So again, if you're interested in that sort of thing, if you are interested in that sort of thing, I'm sure you're listening to Joe Rogan over this podcast anyway, but it was just a really good conversation. And it's something, again, that I was discussing with, I think, if I remember correctly, Weinstein and Rogan went into like diversity hiring and stuff like that. And it was something that I was thinking about last week, and I was discussing with a friend of mine. Things like hiring, big companies like Google specifically hiring to get diversity quotas. I don't understand why that would be a good idea. Surely you'd want the best person for the job, and you should be hiring based on merit as opposed to gender, race, religion, anything like that. So I was just mulling things over in my own mind a couple of days ago, and I was thinking, surely the best thing for these companies to do now, who have got a lot of money to spend, if they want to make real change, is to put funds into children at the moment who are maybe in minority groups or poorer areas of the country, and get them involved and get them interested as best they can at a young age in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. I think STEM, basically. And it will be a long process, but eventually in 30 years' time or 20 years' time, however old people are when they get hired into these areas of work, you would have a natural, diverse landscape in technology. That makes a lot of sense to me. If these companies have got a lot of money to invest in things, why would you not put it into, if you claim that it's an important thing to have diversity in these areas, start with the children now, so that in 20 years' time you get that diversity naturally without having to hire people based on diversity now, who may not be the best for the job. But I think that's quite a controversial thing to say nowadays, and I don't think it should be. Personally, as a man working in childcare, I'm not trying to pretend like I'm a victim or anything like that, but my brother and I have both experienced some form of like, what's the word? It was discrimination, really. Obviously, childcare, we live in South Wales, childcare is a female-dominated job. Anytime we've been on courses, we get funny looks because it's a room full of women, and then a large, bald, bearded man walks in. And I've had people say to me in the past, like, we thought you were in the wrong place. We were wondering who that big, bald, bearded man was at the door. And it's not like discrimination in a particularly negative sense. Like, nobody's told me I can't be a childcare worker just because I'm a man. But, it's true. There are jobs in which members of certain sexes maybe don't feel like they fit or are underrepresented. And again, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. I don't care. I'm good at my job. I enjoy my job. But I'm definitely in the minority being a male in childcare. But it would make sense to me that if I wanted to see more men in childcare, I would start young. Get kids involved in the subjects that you want to see them grow up to be in naturally. And you can't force people to be interested in these subjects, but if you pump a lot of money and a lot of resources into education while children are young, you're obviously going to find that the children that are interested in these subjects take a shine to it, want to learn more, and eventually grow up to become professionals in these areas. I think that makes sense to me. I've started rambling a bit, but I'll leave that there. It's just something I was thinking of this week. And it all came from the Joe Rogan, Brett Weinstein episode that I was listening to recently. A great listen. That's about it. I'm going to leave that there. I have been spending a lot of time on YouTube recently, and I'm trying to make more content, better produced content. I've set up a little green screen in my studio. I've got better microphones, better lighting, better cameras, all that sort of thing. The reason I do YouTube videos is because I love editing and I don't really have a particularly dynamic personality. So I find that if you don't have a particularly dynamic personality, you have to fake it through editing, which is all good. I just enjoy the process of making videos, and it's getting a little bit of a following. I'm finding that the videos that I make on money subjects get a much bigger viewership than the videos I make for my own personal fun, like stand-up paddleboarding or firing my brand new airsoft sniper rifle. But that's fine. I can't force people to watch what they don't want to watch. But yeah, the time that I'm taking to make these videos has increased, and the effort has increased. So I've started a Patreon, which is at Patreon/Ollie Rosser. I don't really know if I'm going to promote this or how to promote this at the moment. I've just been putting it in my video titles because I hate the idea of begging for money, and I would never ever do that. I'm not interested in that whatsoever. I don't like the idea of GoFundMes that are for just personal people's passion projects. All the P's. I don't like the idea of quadruple P's, personal people's passion projects. Or like, my dog needs to go to the vet. I don't have any money to take him to the vet. Please give me money so that I can take my dog to the vet. If you've got a dog, he's your responsibility. Don't ask other people for money. However, I've started a Patreon because the effort that I'm putting into these videos has increased, and it seems that the viewership is increasing, and I think I'm actually helping a few people. So the idea behind starting the Patreon was that if people do get benefit from my videos, they can choose to contribute financially. But again, I'm not asking for this. In fact, I've only got one tier on Patreon at the moment, and I think it's called Your Money Would Be Better Off in a Savings Account, which it would. And I've set it to the absolute minimum that Patreon recommends setting it at. So I think it's £3 a month for people to contribute. I don't like the idea of monthly contributions because I'm not sure that I'll be producing content that regularly. But yeah, I'm having a bit of a moral quandary with this at the minute because I don't like asking for money when it's not earned. But I think I might be in a position where I'm starting to earn any money that somebody might want to contribute, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Anyway, the channel's growing, which I'm really excited about. I'm near that 1,000 subscriber mark. I'm really excited to get there. Which is, I know it's stupid. I'm a 35-year-old man who's making making funny little videos on the internet, but it matters to me. I don't take things too seriously. I don't take myself too seriously, which I hope you get from watching this channel, if anybody does watch this channel. But yeah, that's everything that was on the podcast agenda. I hope everybody's staying safe. Don't forget that there is still a danger of coronavirus. Just because the newspapers have stopped reporting on it so heavily, and just because people in public might look like they're not caring all that much. As I said previously, personally, I'm still taking it very seriously. My family is still taking it very seriously. And I would recommend following all the rules, like wash your hands, stay 6 feet from people, and all of that sort of stuff. Or 2 meters, I think it is. Stay 2 meters from people. So please stay safe. Thanks for listening if you have. Again, I'm really hoping to be back at some point with guests. But in the meantime, I'm trying to do this as a regular thing just so that I can keep the habit going. Hope you've all had a great weekend. Take care, and I'll be back. I will be back. I love you all. Bye-bye.